right, so why don't you do like a quick intro for yourself? I know you're Leonard Bell and you're a woodworker. Now, are you just a wood
Yes.
turner or a woodworker?
No, I'm a woodworker. I don't turn wood. I don't own a lathe.
Okay.
All my work is linear. For whatever reason, I ended up making boxes primarily, keepsake boxes and memorial boxes. That's probably how I got into it, was through memorial boxes. I started working with military families, making boxes that had, for loved ones that they've lost, and that just got me in. It expanded from there. I guess when I was younger, I was doing a lot of it for friends and family, and word of mouth got out. Probably around 2016, I decided to expand onto Etsy, which really opened things up for me. I've been pretty successful there in terms of the audience that I'm reaching, and that has encouraged me to really do a lot of experimentation and making things that I never really thought I'd be making. So.
Oh, well, that's cool. So here's your first question. How did you get so you did kind of actually go over a little bit, but how did you get your start? So it was mostly through word of mouth, through just, what was that first box like? What was that first box for?
The first box I ever made was for a couple who lost a child in utero,
Oh,
believe it or
wow.
not. I mean, and they wanted me to make a memorial box for their child. And talk
Wow.
about pressure.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was,
No,
but it was,
first box ever for something that
yeah,
meaningful.
yeah. So it really, I put a lot of thought and effort into it, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
when I also have a bit of a military background myself, so a lot of my friends, they wanted something even for like their parents or grandparents that were in World War II. They wanted to be able to have a place to put all the memorabilia that they had. So I would
Wow.
go to box. I would, at the time, since I didn't know how to engrave myself, I was putting brass plaques that I had made with the engraving onto the top of the wooden box. Now I can engrave right into the wood by myself. So, which has helped me to become a little bit more creative.
Nice.
But yeah, that's how I got started, was through military.
Wow. Wow, that's yeah, no, nothing like pressure for your very first project
Oh,
ever.
well, I mean, you can't say no,
No, I get it. I get
but
it.
it was really, I really put a lot of time and effort and thought
Sure.
into it.
Well, and I'm sure that was just so meaningful for them too. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just, and for me, that's one of the really great things about art is that it can help with the healing process. Sometimes it can help with the celebration process because it's a lasting thing, which I think
Right.
is really great. What's the favorite part about what you do?
The favorite part is the creativity. I use different types of wood. I don't use any dyes or stains. All of my work is using the natural color of wood. And I like being able to mix and match the different types of wood. I find it amazing how they come together into a cohesive picture. It's almost like painting with wood. Um,
Wow.
and it just comes together and looks like it was meant to be, even though they're woods from all over the world. So, maybe it's because it's all one world. I don't know.
That's
That's my
cool.
favorite part is seeing these pieces come together into one cohesive finished product.
So do you find yourself to be one of those people who's like really into wood? Like you see a random piece of wood and you're like, ooh, I could use that.
Absolutely. And if you were to walk around in my shop, that's exactly what you'll see is random pieces of wood everywhere, all different. And the more cracked and wormholed and knotty and busted up it is, the more I love it.
That's a funny thing. As I've gotten to meet woodworkers, I've noticed that they're like, I was talking to one gentleman who was like, I found this piece of wood and it was clearly on the ground for at least a year. Like he was proud of this. Like, anybody else would have looked at it and been like, kindling?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, burn it. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so what is the hardest thing about what you do?
Having to teach myself different techniques.
Okay.
In box building, there's all kinds of processes for joining two pieces of wood, different techniques, which nobody ever sat down and showed me how to do any of it. So I just had to learn. I had to learn over years and years of experimenting and trial and error. And also a sense of what I think looks good versus doesn't look good,
Right.
and what's functional, what will hold together, because wood has a tendency to move. It absorbs moisture and humidity affect it, so it'll expand and contract and twist and turn. So when you put two pieces together, you have to be able to account for that and
Right.
make a joint that's going to last. So
I guess
those are
since you're mixing and matching, they absorb moisture at different rates too, so that complicates things that much more.
it absolutely does, because some woods are very light and dry and don't have a lot of oil content. Some woods are very dense and heavy and don't absorb much of anything. So yeah, you have to take all of that into consideration when you're working with wood.
Okay. So what advice would you give to anybody of any age who is thinking about starting into woodworking?
Well, be patient, go slow, trust yourself, trust your instincts. Don't be afraid to seek out other people for help. Um, it can be an expensive thing because you have a lot of equipment that you need to purchase. I mean, my shop has taken me years and years and years to accumulate all the equipment that I have. So that part of that is just having the patience. Take it one step at a time.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure just too, the accumulation of equipment, and even the wood itself, that requires time, and that's just one of those things that very few people, yeah, very few people seem to understand that when you're doing a craft, time is necessary, that there are no shortcuts to this process. There's no, you just wake up and you buy all the stuff. And then, because the thing is, even with the equipment, you have to learn how to use it.
Yes.
It's not enough to just want a bandsaw. You have to know how to use the bandsaw
Right.
without killing yourself.
Exactly. And I mean, I pride myself, I still have all 10 fingers,
Ooh.
which is a lot of woodworkers can't say that.
I was going to
So,
say, I've met a lot of woodworkers with like portions of fingers missing or
absolutely.
completely gone.
So, you have to learn how to use your equipment safely. Also, when you're working with wood, you have to have proper ventilation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably scare you if I ever put on my mask that I wear when I'm working with wood. I look like Darth Vader. I mean,
I think it's awesome. I've been in a few shops before, so I know the PPE and it is necessary. There are a lot of artists that don't fully, and I will fully admit I am one of them. I will forget to put on, like if I'm spray painting something, I'll forget to put on glasses, or I'll forget, to put on masks and things like that. But wow, that stuff will build up in your lungs over time, and you
Yes,
just
it
don't want to,
will.
do not want to mess with that at all.
Yeah,
Oh
and
man.
the other thing I do is I work with a lot of epoxy resin
Oh yeah.
because I'll engrave a lid of a box and then I'll fill the engraving with different colors of epoxy and then I'll sand it down. And that sanding, it releases uh, particles of resin into the air, and you don't want to be breathing that stuff in. You know,
No,
that will
no, safety
shorten your life.
first. I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
and you need to learn that stuff, and you need to
Right,
research it ahead of time too, because you don't want to find out the hard way that things like, well, I used to oil paint, things like cobalt, really not good for you.
right, exactly, exactly.
We can chat after this too. Um, is what do you want to say to the next generation of artists?
I would say trust yourself, trust your instincts. Uh, Again, be patient. You're not going to be building, you're not going to paint the Mona Lisa on your first try. It's okay to fail because you learn. You learn more through your failures than you do through your successes.
Oh yeah.
And just don't give up. Just keep at it, even if it's just little things. Because money obviously becomes an issue very quickly. But don't let that be a reason to stop. Don't let failure or the size of your work um, stop you. Just hang in there and be patient.
Yeah. I think we often underestimate the value that we have in failure. We're so, I mean, as a parent of a child who's in the middle school age range, you know, there's so many people who freak out every time a test is failed, or every time, you lose, God forbid you lose a game, God forbid but really without those failures, you don't learn.
Right.
If you don't ever mess up, then you'll never, in fact, I mean, I messed up this weekend. I was working on something and I spent all day trying to do one thing with my beadwork, and I utterly failed. But then in the process of that failure, I actually discovered I created a new pattern because I found a way around. And it's really cool. Like, I was so annoyed with myself because I was like, I spent all day having the wrong goal.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But through that failure, and like you mentioned, perseverance, just keeping going, that's how you discover those things,
Right.
is through that, don't be afraid to mess up. So yeah.
Well, I've probably cut up hundreds of boxes because there was a piece of it that I liked. The rest of it was trash. So it goes in the burn bin, But I mean, I have pieces here that I keep that used to be parts of boxes, and I keep them around until another idea strikes me that of
Nice.
what I could do with it. I mean, sooner or later, an idea will hit me. I'll be sitting here twiddling my thumbs and thinking about that piece, and,
Right.
and an idea will pop into my head, and next thing you know, I've built a box.
Right.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
good, maybe it's not, but that's what happens. So.
Do you ever like go around after storms and like troll for storm damage?
No,
No.
no, because the wood that
Too
I
many fresh
use is
victims.
I want it to be kiln dried, and
Okay.
I don't have that kind of equipment. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm sourcing though. Actually, sourcing it takes a lot of research and a lot of time to come up with the right source for things. I mean, because I want to be environmentally conscientious,
Right.
and I'm not going to go to somebody that's just chopping down trees that they shouldn't be.
Right.
Looking for sustainable forestry is, I think it's an important issue. So yeah, finding the right sources is an important part of what I do for me.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting point too, because yeah, I mean, we do have to be mindful of our environment. We have to be
Mhm.
mindful of now, I don't necessarily, glass isn't exactly one of those materials unless you're into sea glass, which is basically very pretty junk because it's glass, it's been littered. But
Oh,
you're not
right,
going to find
right.
sea beads that way,
Uh-huh.
And the funny thing is, I did talk to a person who does work with sea glass, and she said that she'll be walking along the shore. If she finds a piece and it's not ready, she throws it back. She's like, "Come back to me later." She tosses it back out into the ocean to be
That's
tumbled
funny.
around some more. But yeah, in all seriousness, I mean, when you do work with a material that you know does greatly impact the environment, it's good to hear that you're willing to find those resources in ways that do not necessarily target, especially some of the older forests that, replacing those is not going to be easy or quick.
Right, right. Or down like in the Amazon where they're just, tearing the
Yeah.
whole forest down. I mean, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. It's good to hear. How do you find those resources? Do you just like have just like kind of like contacts and
yeah, talking to other woodworkers and just a lot of research on the internet, talking to owners. There's a place out in Oxford, Hearn Hardwoods, who they're really into it. And, so that's one of my sources. But, I stumbled across it because I was looking for a particular type of wood. This is years ago, and they had it. So I went out there and I sat with a guy and I talked to him and just got into a whole discussion about, where does he get his wood and why and how. And, I learned a lot from that guy. So I still use him. There's another place that's actually an online company that works exclusively in the Northeast. So they don't have a lot of the exotic woods. They have maple, cherry, walnut, like the staples.
yeah,
But they're another company that's very into sustainable forestry. So
right.
it's just a matter of doing the research and finding the people that you want to do business with.
Yeah.